You ready?
Yep.
All right. Well, I'm excited. I'm Mike Bartel. I'm going to introduce my friend here in a second, but for a little while now, we wanted to start kind of a new little thing on the Free International page called You Need to Know. We, over all the years we've been doing this work with anti-human trafficking movement, Denise and I started way back in 2003, 2004, and Free International back in 2007. We've had our paths crossed with such significant people all over the country and the world, and we want to expose you to some of them over the weeks and months ahead. And today I want to introduce you to Lynnette Grable. We met back leading into the Super Bowl outreach in Phoenix, which I think was like 2014, 15, somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And Lynnette I want Lynnette to begin to tell a little bit about her story, but before we started that, wanted to let you guys know what a privilege it's been to work with Lynnette. This might weave its way into our quick conversation, but I grew up with basically on a reservation with family members adopted into our family from I think the same tribe you're a part of, and so I've always had a huge heart for people going and living on reservations, and those who are part of our country's history and the first peoples that are going on, and as it pertains to human trafficking, there's such vulnerability and a lot of things going on in that area that you have given such great voice to. But before you get into some of that, not our native daughters, we really want to introduce. Why don't you give a little background in yourself? Let people know who you are.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Man, we've been friends for a long time, Mike. Yeah, it was about 2014 when we crossed paths in Phoenix, Arizona. I resided in Phoenix, Arizona about 11 years. Again, my name is Lynnette Grable. I am both Northern Arapaho from the Wind River Reservation, and I reside here in Wyoming, but I also am Hunkpapa Lakota from the Standing Rock Sioux tribe. It's a wonderful thing when you trust and you live for God, because He will have you on just unexpected journeys, and it's learning seasons. There's trying seasons, but there's mountaintop seasons too, and so I'm grateful for them all. The time that I met you, Mike, we were doing Super Bowl outreach. I spent a lot of years doing ministry, both in homeless outreach. I did 4 years in prison ministry for the women's unit down in Florence, Arizona. I did Skid Row outreach when I resided in LA. And so, I've always just had a heart for people who were in need. And because of my own background and my own lived through experiences and traumas, I always just had a seed within me, I guess, that always wanted to help others. And just because of that, I feel like this calling and this purpose to serve others. I ended up doing human trafficking, child sex trafficking, teen outreach, both with churches and different partners and different advocates. When I met you, Mike, we were doing street outreach in Phoenix, Arizona. We used to do that, twice a month, where the areas where runaways or, prostitution would be going on. And so anyways, the street outreach team actually led us to Super Bowl outreach that we would do every Super Bowl. And the year that I met you, the Super Bowl was in Phoenix, Arizona. So, God had a plan for us to cross paths, and we've been partners and friends ever since. And so, we had a good outreach during that year, but I think it was the biggest takeaway was probably coming across you and just building a partnership, because it's really important when you have a shared mission with somebody, and definitely we have a shared mission for, of course, especially in the anti-human trafficking work. My work in human trafficking kind of evolved. When I met you, I was working for a nonprofit organization anti-human trafficking organization. But in that work, I found that most of the anti-human trafficking organizations across the nation, the bigger ones, I would say, they didn't have anything specifically for Native Americans, victims, or outreach or prevention or awareness. And so I started Not Our Native Daughters, specifically for the education of human trafficking and missing and murdered of Indigenous women, girls, and persons. And so when I met you, I was just on my first baby steps, didn't quite know what I was doing, try to, put feelers and try to figure out how and to go about this. But, all along the way, I looking back now, I started back in 2012, 2013 area, I could see where God pointed me this way or God pointed me that way. And, it was a lot of blind faith involved and a lot of that. But especially partners like yourself really helped me to kind of cultivate what I want it to look like, what Not Our Native Daughters should look like. And so anyways, I'm grateful for that partnership, and I'm grateful that we're here today.
Yeah, no, I can't be more thankful to God that he brought you in this space, and we became friends and have worked a ton together. Tell everyone briefly what are some of the dynamics or even statistics. I'm not a real statistic person, but I think really people need to hear how the vulnerability among Native Americans are adding to human trafficking and missing and murdered Indigenous women.
Yeah, well, I think like overall, when it comes to human trafficking, even child or, sex trafficking, there's still a lot of work to be done overall, both in a global sense and within our country. But the same thing it applies to Indian country. You're looking at 574 different tribal nations within the U.S. alone, not including Canada or South America. And so when you look at that in a bird's eye view, and then you understand there's 574 different tribal nations, there's 574 different kind of culture and way of living. It could be a little bit difficult to train all of Indian country in one swoop about what is human trafficking, what is child sex trafficking, what is coercion, what does being grooming mean, what is, how does it impact a reservation? Because when I first started reaching out to tribes and doing these educations on child sex trafficking and human trafficking, most of the people there would say, oh, it doesn't happen here. I had to bring cases from their own tribal members to them to show them and prove like this is happening in your area. Another big pathway of how human trafficking happens in Indian country is through our tribal hotels and casinos. I spent a lot of years doing hospitality training for tribal hotels and casinos so they can identify it within their own entity of the casino or hotel. But also, I think there's just a myth or a belief that it doesn't happen in rural areas. And, unfortunately, human trafficking and child sex trafficking is the most profitable, I think, criminalized and, revenue that is out there. And so whenever that is the top of criminalization revenue, you have to think on how does that happen? And so I think most part, just like any crimes against children, any crimes against people in a way that they're forced or they're enslaved, I think people back away from that and or they don't want to talk about it. But we have to talk about it. One of the things I always say is we have to talk about it if we're going to heal it, if we're going to address it, if we're going to, build a small, short-term and long-term goals to address it. And so anyways, I've done a lot of groundwork, in various different tribes, educating tribal nations and social services and even tribal law enforcement and even outside government and state entities on what is human trafficking look like in Indian country. And there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but I think with the MMIW, the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls movement, I think we're seeing a lot of understanding of, human trafficking plays a huge role in MMIW, and is one of the big main stems of the reason why we have so many missing and murdered Indigenous persons. But, you have to get people to talk about it, and you have to get people to act upon it. You have to petition leaders and state and federal leaders and tribal leaders, and you have to get other people involved so that, things can begin to shift. And I feel like that's where God has placed me. That's what he kind of cultivated within me in these years of doing anti-human trafficking work, is to build those bridges and build those entities that are not talking to one another, so that they can start to have a conversation and start to begin to address the issue and to start saving lives.
Yeah, and I've seen God work through you amazingly since you started, and I know you're just beginning this work in many ways, and I know what that feels like. I've been at this, we're the OGs now for a while, right? But even then, it feels like graduate level education every day in doing this work. But you have been more than faithful. God has put you in. I know Lynnette as just a fierce and consistent advocate and warrior for those who are being exploited in all areas. We teach our team all the time that you never step over one need to get to another need. And when you work in vulnerable areas as you do, you find yourself working among a lot of broad areas. And I'm just going to give you a shout out to Lynnette. Just this last fall, actually ran for Congress in the state of Wyoming against a Cheney. You are a crazy woman. And yet, the respect that you have and the competency you possess and the consistency you've brought to the table. I know not only have I seen God do great things through you, but I really see God as setting not our native daughters up for just incredible success in the months and years to come. And Free International is proud of you and proud to partner with you. One of the areas that you had mentioned, and we're just going to give a quick shout out to this as we're taping this week on Dateline NBC. They're going to be covering some of these issues, even though it's on TV. This week, it's going to be on the internet, I'm sure, forever and ever. Tell everybody a little bit about that, and then just tell them where they can find you on an ongoing basis, and then we'll call it a day.
Yeah. Well, I just got a phone call one day, and it was from NBC, and a couple months back. And they were saying, hey, we're doing a MMIW show. We're looking we're interviewing different advocates across the country. I believe, in that conversation with the producer, they said, Madam Secretary Deb Haaland had mentioned you. And so, I was just happy with that. Like, I could have just gotten that and been happy. I got to mention, and just a little side note there, I ran for Congress so that I can put our issues in the front line of conversations. And one of them was the missing, murdered Indigenous women and girls. If you look back at my campaign, most of the time I'm talking about that specific issue. And so, I knew for a fact that I wouldn't win, but I knew I had an opportunity and a platform to talk about issues. Yeah. And if you talk about human trafficking, if you talk about MMIW, we have to talk about the factors, and that's, extreme poverty, just all the different areas of what we face in a tribal community. So I just utilize that to get people talking and get people educated. And it did, after the race was done, a plethora of people reached out to me, wanted to learn more, wanted to be educated. So, I conquered what I wanted to conquer in running for that campaign. But, back to my story with Dateline, they reached out to me, they interviewed me, they said they were interviewing other advocates, across the nation. And, God would have it that I was chosen to actually be on the show. And so a lot of the whole entire Dateline production team came out, interviewed me here right in my own reservation here at the Wind River Reservation, Northern Arapaho tribe here in Wyoming. And, it was an emotional day for me. It's difficult to tell a story that that hurts your soul. And be on lights and camera and, you know, share glimpses of your trauma and share other people's trauma. You know, I walk with other families that have, you know, missing or murdered family members and loved one daughters and sons. And, you know, I don't tell my own story for myself. I tell these stories for everyone that has ever been a victim, that has ever been raped, that has ever been sexually assaulted, that has ever been hurt, that has ever been abandoned, that has ever been homeless, and who has ever had to resort to the streets to survive. And so, you know, those things are kind of hard to kind of articulate. And so, you know, I was honored to be in that place to give voice to those issues that so many Indigenous women and girls and persons face. You know, I'm still kind of blown away by it, and I'm humbled. And so, anyways, that show airs tonight, and I'm already feeling
Tonight is August 27th, 2021. But go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, I just was saying I'm still blown away by it. And you know, I just like anything else in my life, I'm trusting God for what happens next. But I'm excited, and I'm definitely going to continue to give voice to the needy.
Awesome. Awesome. So everyone, I wanted, like I said, when we started, I wanted to introduce you all to Lynnette. You need to know Lynnette. You need to know Not Our Native Daughters. They're going to be a great resource to you. If you can watch the show, look, you know, you're going to look up, if you can watch it tonight, because we're going to run this today, August 27th. It's going to run tonight in your time zone. Look up Dateline. But it's going to be on the internet. It'll run forever. It'll be a great resource for you to understand the vulnerabilities that exist on our reservations, and just the the deep trauma and trials, as you've just seen and heard from Lynnette, that need to be addressed, and how we might be able to come alongside Lynnette and serve that population of people, as we like to say, until everyone is free. But Lynnette, again, we're proud of you, more than you can ever know. You can find Lynnette at notournativedaughters.org. God is doing big things. We got some awesome news this last week that we'll just leave for another day. But looking forward to picking up this conversation again, maybe a few weeks from now after the show's aired and you're starting to get your feedback. We're also going to have Lynnette on a panel discussion out of Las Vegas here with Mayor's Faith Initiative. We'll be posting more about that. You're going to be hearing a lot more from Lynnette, and we're going to learn a lot from you. Thanks for your friendship, Lynnette, and your effectiveness and being fierce.
Thank you. Ha-ho.